Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome to the Healing Generation podcast. My name is Ariel Jimenez, and I'm back to being your host for the youth voice portion of the podcast. This podcast is focusing on the healing center work happening within all of our communities. Today, we have an opportunity to hear from one of our youth leaders who will give us an insight on how healing looks like in today's generation. We have our guest, Francisco Mendoza, who is based out of here, San Jose, California, who is also a Joven Noble graduate and who we're excited to share space with. So with that being said, welcome, Francisco.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. So my name is Francisco Fabian Mendoza. My parents are from Ocotlan, Jalisco, but I'm born and raised on the east side of San Jose. I would say I'm more Americanized than anything, just because from my family, I was the only one who was born here. So that kind of really changes my look and view on my culture and my roots. It's kind of taken a toll on me because it's been a little bit harder just to connect towards that. But overall, I think I've been able to come up from where I am to where I am now.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think part of it too is when you grow up here, there's a different level of culture, right? So I know, I was born in Mexico, in Ocotán, Jalisco, but I was raised in San Jose, California. So my mom always says, ni de aquí ni de allá, como la India María, right? So not knowing how you identify culturally, how you identify whether it's with the United States or the Mexico, but I just wanted to point out that it's even weird calling you Francisco because I've known you as always as Pancho, right? Mm-hmm. From the moment that you came to Circle, it's always Pancho. I think within our culture, in the Latino culture, the Mexican culture, those nicknames really stick with us. But talking about that first time that you came to Circle, how did you get introduced to Circle? Like, how was that introduction? Why did you even come to Circle to begin with?
Okay, so funny story. It actually began with my brother. He used to be a student with Joven Noble as well. And, well, he introduced me to Mario and everybody else. But growing up, like I said, it was very tough for me. So I used to do, like, a lot of things that were not good for me. I used to steal a lot, too. And then it got to the point where my brother and my parents were like, no, it's enough. I think you need to change. And so they introduced me to you guys. And, well, the first time I came, I really didn't want to be there. I'm pretty sure you know this too, Ariel. Like, to me, it was just like, I don't want to be here. It's awkward. I'm a shy person as it is. But after a while, it felt like a second home to me, and I just kept wanting to come back.
From being a shy person to now being on a podcast, right? It's a little bit different being able to tell your story. I love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, your older brother was also part of Circle, and I believe that you also had a uncle or another relative that was in Circle too.
My sister.
Oh, your sister también. So you're already family connected. So how was it coming back to Circle as you for yourself? So I know you had heard about it through your brother, through your sister, but how did that connect for you?
Coming back was, like I said, it felt like a second home. It just felt right. And, coming back to see not necessarily the same faces, but different faces at every circle was like, oh, okay, something's going on here. It's working. People actually like coming, or people are interested in coming. So, it's good knowing that people were interested in Joven Noble.
And then thinking about Joven Noble, if you go back to any of the teachings, what was the number one teaching that you really gravitated towards that you would want to, highlight or speak of?
So funny that you mentioned that. I don't know why, but this one has always stuck to me. It's always been the 10 steps to put on a condom, or, the 10 condom steps one. I don't know why, but that one has always stuck to me. It's like, because my parents never really talked to me about, anything sexual or in that section. And my brother brought it up, but it was never really like, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you should do things. So that one has always stuck to me. Like, this is the correct way to do it.
Yeah, I think that conversation is always a tough one, right? Because even when I sat
Hmm.
in that conversation as a participant, it wasn't a conversation that was common around the dinner table. So
Hmm.
it was a little bit more of, are we sure we're going to have this conversation? But also, let's have it not only in terms of just a physical connection, but talking about all the aspects of relationships. What does a healthy relationship look like? What are some boundaries that I want to set? What kind of person do I want to be in these relationships? And not only as an intimate partner, but as a son, as a cousin, as a brother. So no, definitely, I do remember those conversations, and those were always definitely interesting. I think one of the concepts though that we kept talking about within all of the groups was palabra. So if I were to ask you the question of palabra, how would you define palabra? What does that mean to you?
So to me, I've always changed it because growing up, everything changes. It never stays the same. So currently, I've thought of palabra as something where you don't stop what you're doing. You keep doing it till you get better at it. So that's what palabra means to me at the moment. Just keep going, grow it, and make it better.
Yeah, and always that commitment to do it a little bit different, right? Because I think palabra
Correct.
might be a different definition for us last week, and it might change for us. It might change to a different definition in the future. The other concept that we talked about was breaking cycles, right? Talking about healing. How
Hmm.
what does healing look like for you in your home, and what does healing look like for you in your community?
So at home, it's a little hard right now, just because a lot of things are going on with COVID and the staying indoors. It's a little difficult trying to explain what healing means. But overall, it's more like working for yourself. Make sure you're safe. Keep your spirits high, basically. But in your community, it's a little different because people might look up to you, or they might say, well, "Who is he?" Like you're always gonna be put down, or you're gonna be brought up. So it's a little different. But nonetheless, you should still always be positive and smile all the time.
Yeah, I think that's important about healing too, because it does look different if we're talking about healing within our home and if we're talking about healing within the community. You brought up one important topic though, that healing looks different right now in our homes because of COVID.
Hmm.
So, what do you think if you were to highlight what was one issue that youth nowadays face that COVID brought upon us as a community? So, what is one thing that COVID has placed an obstacle in our path, if you were to say it that way?
Well, it depends who we're talking about. Are we talking about adults, or are we talking about youth?
Let's focus in on youth. So as youth, as young people, young adults, whether it's coming out of high school, whether it's starting your college career, whether you're starting the workforce, as young adults in today's society, what barriers has COVID really placed in front of us?
So as a youth, whether it be in high school or college, it honestly comes down to like your education, because a lot of schools shut down, so everything became like online or through computer, and that really messes with youth, because it kind of brings them down. A lot of youth get distracted, their grades start going down, and it's not the same. And the same goes for adults, because with COVID, everything started shutting down. That means less work. That means people getting fired, or they're getting laid off, and it's just you feel depressed because you got all these bills to pay. You don't have enough money to pay rent, and it's like, where do I go from here? So everything just starts going downhill for everybody. But I mean, it's only a matter of time before everything starts getting better.
Yeah, well, I think that's a positive part, right? Is that glimpse of hope that kind of keeps us going. But I'm glad that you're able to highlight that there was a lot of different barriers, right? Financially, people were struggling. Emotionally, a lot of people were definitely struggling with depression, even just to simply connect and log on to school, to connect and log on to circles. You actually participated within our virtual Hova Nobla circles, right? So you did it in person and you did it virtually over the summer. What was the difference? If you could highlight the difference between both of those, what made Circle virtually different for you? And did it help at all?
There actually was a big difference. Like, because in person, you can tell everybody is a little more excited, more in tune with it. Everyone kind of answers a little more. And then obviously you see everybody's faces. So you can see people's emotions and how people react to different things. But over like online, it's a little different because you have the option to either turn on your camera or leave it off. And a lot of students like to leave it off because it's like, oh, I don't want to show my face, or I can just be on my phone while doing this and that. So it was a little different, but nonetheless, you kind of still get the message through. It's just a little harder.
Ooh, and then I know you also talked about feeling, a little bit down, feeling a little bit depressed during COVID and making it hard for us to connect to the outside world. If you had a message for somebody that was feeling down, that was feeling depressed during the COVID era, during the COVID time, what message would you want to give them?
I'd probably tell them that, you know what, I've been there. I know what it feels like, and you're not alone. You're really not. Like, you have your family around you. If you're doing Jova Noble, well, you got all your mentors, all the teachers, all the students, everybody around you is going through the same thing. You're not the only one. So you can look around, and even if they don't want to help, you just got to keep looking, keep your head up, keep smiling, because at the end of the day, you're doing it for yourself, not necessarily for others. And you got to make others happy so then you're happy.
Yeah, and I think that's important to highlight too, that we're doing it for ourselves, because sometimes I think in this journey we tend to do it for a lot of other people's, and we tend to lose ourselves in that process. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you mentioning that. Now, thinking about, you talked about hope, talked about the future, talk about things kind of going back to normal. Thinking about August, it's about a month away, about a month and a half away, and schools are going to somewhat kind of reopen. People are somewhat going to go back to being in person. Do you see any kind of barriers as a student to going back into the classrooms? Is there any anxiety that you might feeling? Is there any things that you anticipate that might cause some issues in the community with young folks?
Well, the question's a little hard for me just because I'm about to graduate, so I won't be in person anymore. But nonetheless, I think some students will struggle. Like, seeing my nephews, they just recently started going back to school, and it's in person. And I always ask them, like, hey, how's it going? Like, how do you like school right now? And they're like, yeah, it's good. It's just a little different. We still got to wear a mask. Or my nephew, he's going to Bellarmine at the moment, and he's not wearing a mask. I'm like, hey, how come you guys aren't wearing masks? He told me that it's just because they need the vaccine in order to go back to school, which is weird for me because some places it's either like, oh, if you don't want to get it, just get tested every week or whatever. But nonetheless, he's doing pretty well. He doesn't seem to be like struggling too much. So I think the youth will incorporate back into the norm pretty easily. Unlike adults or like college students, I think they'll take it a little bit harder just because they've been doing a lot more than the youth have.
Yeah, so that level of exposure might be a little bit different. I think that's important to highlight too, because you mentioned, your cousin going to Bellarmine. So for the people who are not familiar with the San Jose school system, Bellarmine's a private school where they're, Mount Pleasant, it's a public school. So there's even different levels of resources, right? At Bellarmine, they're able to mandate saying if you want to come on campus, you have to be vaccinated. And there's resources to help those families do so. But at a public school system, there's barely even any funds to cover some of the hotspots or the laptops for even people to connect virtually. So I think that was another issue that I saw in the community, that some schools were more set up to support families through this virtual connection, while other schools were really struggling and weren't able to support the families to the full extent that they needed. So I think that I just wanted to highlight that before we move on. But thinking about your journey with Hope and Noble, right? You came back as a peer leader, and we always appreciate your voice here, and we definitely appreciate you, just being in circle and just how you carry yourself, because you're a great example of what a Hope and Noble is. But you didn't do it alone. So if you were to highlight who is one of your mentors, maybe a relative that you connected to that helped you along your healing journey, who would that be?
So for mentor, I would probably say you were like one of the bigger ones. You were always there for me. You kind of understood where I came from because you also lived through the same, I would say same things. Um, for relatives, I would probably say my brother. My brother was like very big. He started the first sessions with Mario Osuna, so he kind of like understood it a lot better than I did when it came to that. And he really told me like, hey, if you don't understand this, you can always ask me. I probably will still remember. And so yeah, I would say that you guys.
No, thank you for that too. And I want to focus on your brother right now for a little second. So you just mentioned Emmanuel, right? Is his name?
Yeah, Emmanuel.
We're big on gratitude, right? We're big on giving thanks, whether it's for another day of life or for another breath, for our mentors, our elders that are still the long walkers and the long talkers. But if you were to give a message to Emmanuel, a message of gratitude, what would you say to him right now?
I would say thank you for always being there because you were my role model. You kind of played my dad's role in that part because dad always worked. He was always angry at us. He never really understood what we were going through or how to connect to us. So and you actually understood it. And seeing you leave the house, it was hard, but I understood that you had to do what you had to do. And you always told me, keep your head up, make sure you do things correctly, and you'll be fine once you get to the point of life where you need to go from being a young adult to adulthood.
Thank you, and I'm sure he'll probably appreciate too, even listening to those words, because I think sometimes we know we're grateful, we know we carry that in our hearts, but sometimes we might not necessarily say it verbally.
Hmm.
But staying focused on conversations. If you were in the same room right now with, say, a 15-year-old, 14-year-old Pancho, who is just getting introduced to circle, who is just getting introduced to what does cultura look like, what does healing look like, what advice would you give a 14-year-old, 15-year-old Pancho?
I'd probably mention that I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you want to do, or what it is that you're thinking right now, because I was in your shoes when I was your age. But at the end of the day, you should kind of give this a chance, because you might learn something from it. You can see what others are going through, and then understand your own pain. And at the end of the day, you'll end up liking it. Or even at the end of the day, you can even both heal from it, help each other out, and then therefore continue the cycle and help others.
I liked how you framed that, right? That if you opened up and deal with some of your traumas, you will allow other people to open up and deal with their traumas.
Hmm.
How was that journey for you? Because we always talk about that if you don't tell your story, somebody will tell it for you. So how was that transition into circle, being able to talk about some of the scars that you carry and some of the traumas that you had gone through?
So I'm not gonna say it was easy. It was definitely a little hard, just because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, or where I even was at that moment, because all I was thinking was, I want to go home. I don't want to be here. This is not for me. I felt like I was being, manipulated in a way where it was kind of like, oh, you need to do this so you can change for the better of you. But at the end of the day, after maybe like 2 3 sessions, I kind of understood, like, okay, they're here to help me. It's not necessarily because they want me to be better, but they want to see me do better. And so, going through that, and after a while, I felt good about myself, and I knew I could do better, and I kept wanting to go back. And after going back, it just felt like I said earlier, it felt like a second family. I felt like I could always be there and rely on others from there.
And that's the tricky part, right? Because I think a lot of the times when we're voluntold to show up, when someone brings us and says you need to be here but don't explain anything, you kind of question it from the beginning. I know I hated that when somebody told me, "We you got to change, you got to be better, and this is the group for you." I'm like, "No, it's not. I'm not here for that." So it's always a little bit different when you get voluntold. But we're glad that you showed up. We're glad that you kept showing up, and now we're definitely glad that you're one of our peer leaders. I know we call on you a lot to speak up. We call on you a lot to become a mentor for some of the other, younger 14, 15-year olds. So we definitely appreciate it. If you were to look at one of the values, whether it's honor, whether it's respect, whether it's palabra, any of the values that we talk about in Circle, what is the number one value that you want to make sure that you carry with yourself moving forward?
I'd probably say respect. Respect has actually been like very big in my life at the moment, just because around the time when I started Joven Noble, I actually also began a relationship with my girlfriend, which we have currently been together for almost 5 years now. And I've always respected her. That's like the number one thing. I don't like disrespecting women. I think that's like a horrible thing to do. So going forward, and like with my nephews too, I always tell them like, hey, you should always respect, either whether it be women or older people or just anybody in general, because with respect comes gratitude, and then you also get to learn a lot more from those people, and you never know what you can get out of it. So it's always good to be respectful and carry that on.
Respect. And I think, respect definitely means a lot different things to different people. Because I remember my grandpa really talking about, the misconception that you should treat others how you want to be treated. My grandpa told me from the beginning that was incorrect. You don't want to treat other people how you want to be treated because you want to treat them how they want to be treated. It's about that relationship. It's about asking them, how can I best show up in this relationship? So I appreciate that. And congratulations on the 5 years too. Is there something else that you were going to mention?
Yeah, I was gonna add on to what you said about was it your deal that said that respect others how you want to be respected. He's right. It's not always true, because there has been times where, like, you get someone who's like kind of rude, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna be rude to them, but then you don't get anything out of it if you're rude to them. And on the other hand, if you get someone who's nice and you do the same thing, you're like nice to them. Again, you can it can either be a win-win situation where you get something out of it, or you just don't get anything out of it.
Yeah. And I think that's important too, making sure that other people don't dictate our values and other people don't compromise our values. Because we could get
Hmm.
very caught up in, because you treated me like this, and I'm gonna treat you like that.
Yep.
So and definitely don't want to be there. Now going back to your girlfriend though, I wanna just commend you for what you mentioned. You said I never want to disrespect women, and that's important. And you talking about that you needed to reinforce that with your little nephews and your little nieces. Why do you think it's so important for that message to be highlighted and that message to be passed on?
So growing up, I always saw my parents kind of arguing and fighting here and there, and that kind of like, that threw me off. And it always seemed like my dad was kind of disrespectful, just in the way he like talked to her. And I never really liked that growing up. So I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be like my dad. I want to be different. Like in some aspects, yes, I do like what my dad does, but in most things, like the way he thinks or other things, I rather change and be a little different. And I can see that in my brother too. The way he thinks and acts is different from the way my dad does. So that's why I've always wanted to be respectful and not really do anything towards women.
No, thank you for sharing that too, because I think that's important for us to talk about. How to I'm not a young man anymore. I'll be honest about that. That I'm not a young man anymore. But when I was young, I got raised by a lot of powerful women, and even my older
Hmm.
brother and my grandfather really taught me not to disrespect women. That was an important message that I should carry as I grew up. And I never understood why my relationship with my dad was rocky. I loved him, but I hated him. I loved him because he was an incredible father and was there for me, but I hated him because he was a shitty husband. To be honest, to use those words, he was not a great husband. He would cheat a lot. He would disrespect a lot, and for whatever reason, I hold that against him even to this day. So I just wanted to highlight, what you mentioned, because it's rare that we see a lot of young men say, "Oh, I want to be respectful to women and all women." I don't need to be reminded that that's someone's daughter. I don't need to be reminded that that's someone's child. I should just respect them because they deserve to be respected. So thank you for that. Thinking about breaking cycles, right? We always talked about intergenerational trauma, that if you don't address your trauma, it gets passed on to the next generation.
Hmm.
Recently, in sitting space with you, we talked about intergenerational blessings, that blessings could get passed on to the next generation too. How would you explain intergenerational blessings to someone that doesn't know what circle is, someone that doesn't know what those concepts are?
Ooh, it'd be a little difficult just because not everybody likes to pay attention to what that means. But it wouldn't be a matter of explaining it. I feel like it'd be more of a matter of showing it. Like, here, this is how it should be done. This is what can happen. This is what can come out of it. Like, paint the bigger picture is what I'm trying to say. Because if you just tell them like, oh, if you explain to them in a way where you think they might understand, they're not going to understand. That's what I always got out of it. When people would explain things to me, I never understood it. I needed something that was more in par with what I understood than what they understood.
Hmm.
You know.
No, I agree. So thinking about that bigger picture, what is that bigger picture for you? Thinking about maybe fast forwarding 5 years from now, um, what is that bigger picture for you? Whether it's healing related, community related, education related, or just personally, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Community related, I do want to get back into my community. You know, I want to be able to help a little more, just because everything that's going on right now, I don't have too much time on my hands, or I'm very busy and I have other things to do. But you know, within time, I should be able to be a little more free and connect more with my community, and then with myself, I need to work on myself a lot more, just because you know sometimes I feel down and I can't communicate that. But you know, I always have people there for me, so it feels good to know that people are there for me.
Thank you, and just know that we ain't going nowhere either. So if you need anything from us, we're definitely here too. Whether it's myself, Yesenia, Mario, or Mickey or anybody else that you're connected to from the circle. Thinking about that next generation though, then we always talk about the next generation of warriors. We talk about the next generation of community workers. What advice do you have for that next generation coming up? So we talked about what advice do you have for yourself when you were 14.
Hmm.
But thinking about anybody, whether it's one of your nieces, one of your nephews, whether it's somebody else that might be getting introduced to Circle right now, what advice do you have for them?
So I talk to my nephew a lot because everybody says we look alike, you know, that we're siblings, but we're not. He's just my nephew. But I always talk to him because he's very much like me in the way where he's shy. Everybody says we look alike, and you know, so I kind of like see where he is going. He's basically following the same path as me. So whenever I talk to him, I like to ask him like, "Hey, how you doing? Like, how are you doing things? Or what do you think you should do here?" And if he's going through a path where I already went through, I tell him, "Hey, this is what I did. It worked for me, but it might not work for you. So maybe you can try this." And most of the time, he's like, "Okay, I'll think about it," or "Yeah, I'll do that instead." You know, and he does end up doing it. Like he takes my advice, and he applies it to whatever he's doing, and it actually works for him most of the time. And I like to see that, you know, that what I'm giving forward is working for a younger generation.
And definitely not just your words, right? Because I think you giving advice is one thing, but I think really where your strong suit comes in is you showing that example. You showing this is
Hmm.
what you can do, if you put a little bit of energy, not only into your work, but into yourself too. Because I've also seen you do a lot of self care and a lot of self work.
Hmm.
Thinking about one word though that Mario introduced to us when we were in circle, talking about sacred and sacredness. He would always say the concept, "You're sacred just the way you are." And we recently interviewed you for one of our videos of uncovering your sacredness. But when you first heard those words, "You're sacred just the way you are," what did that mean to you?
When I first heard it, ooh, that was a while back. But thinking back, I thought it was more like, oh, you know, if I'm good here, then I'm good everywhere else. Like I don't need to change for anybody. At the end of the day, I'm meant to be who I am, and I'm glad to be where I am.
I'm meant to be who I am, and I'm glad to be who I am. That's a perfect way to summon it up. Now, would that answer change any difference to right now?
You know what? Now that I think about it, I don't think it changed too much, just because you know, growing up in a Hispanic household with nephews and nieces running all over the place, you kind of like grow up to be a role model. So yeah, I'd probably say that I'm still glad to be who I am and where I am.
Perfect. And then now, would you answering the question of "You're sacred just the way you are"? If you were to answer it today, how would you answer that now?
I'd probably say that you know nobody's perfect. You kind of grow up to be where you should be in life, whether you struggle to be there or to get there, or you have an easy path where everything's just given to you. At the end of the day, you're gonna be happy to be alive, to have people around you who will care for you, and you know to have others that look up to you.
Thank you. So we talked about traumas, we talked about healing. What is one thing that you do right now that's healing for you?
So one thing I actually like to do is I recently took up photography. Well, not recently. I've been doing it for a good while now. My brother actually, brought me forward to, and he showed me a lot of photography stuff. And I created my own portfolio. I started taking pictures. That actually has made me feel very calm, and it's brought me up from like a lot of negativity, and it makes me feel really good. Seeing that people like what I do.
Oh yeah, no, I know we definitely are connected to an amazing photographer in Miguel Ozuna, who
Hmm.
one time really talked about that photography. It's a time machine. That the moment that you see a picture, it brings back those emotions. It brings back memories to when that was taken. So that photography truly is a time traveling machine. But talking about you being behind the camera, what healing aspects do you get from being able to capture people and things and places in their essence?
It makes me smile. Seeing people like happy, and like the way they portray their emotions and their physical emotions. It's very calming. It makes you understand why you should really be here and capture these perfect moments for others, and even yourself, because there's been times where I capture moments for myself where I'm with my girlfriend or something, and it's just it's nice. Even like I've gone back and seen all my old pictures from when I first started to where I am now, and I still remember, like, oh, I remember what happened this day, or damn, I don't remember taking that one, but that's a pretty good picture.
Thank you for that. And I think, one of the things that we struggle in today's society is that we struggle talking about our own gifts. When we start painting, we're scared to call ourselves artists. When we start taking pictures, we're scared to call ourselves photographers. In anything that we do, right? We're scared to how we're going to get criticized by society. If there's somebody out there who is thinking about becoming a photographer, thinking of becoming an artist, and find healing in that, what advice would you have for them?
It's not that hard. You don't need to buy a camera. You don't need anything. As long as you have a phone, you can do it. Because I that's how I taught myself. My first couple pictures were with an iPhone. I had an iPhone 4 at the moment, and that's terrible quality. But with experience, and the more you do it, the more you understand it, you eventually will learn that you don't need like a professional camera. I recently bought a $200 camera, and all it takes is a little bit of editing, and boom, perfect picture. You don't need much. You can just take a picture of anything you like, and you're good.
So if you have the time, if you have the passion, it's definitely doable. So I
Correct.
think that is definitely the message. So no, I appreciate that. I definitely will make sure that all the listeners here do also get a link to your portfolio, because we would love to see all of your work, and we can't wait to see what else you come up with. So thank you for that. Is there anything else that you would like to mention? Any other things that you've connected to that have helped you within your healing journey?
You know, being actually a photographer, you do get a lot of networking through that. Like I've met a lot of photographers, who not only do they major and obviously minor in the same thing I do, but they've introduced me to bigger people, and you can really grow through that. It has a lot of perks, I would say.
No, definitely. So no, thank you again. I think there's definitely a lot of benefits of finding different coping strategies, different talents, different gifts that you have to offer to the world. So thank you for sharing that. Now, as we come to a close, though, because there's a lot that you've already shared, right? You shared your experiences within Circle, you shared your experiences of even just healing within your community, and you shared a little bit about what are some of those concepts mean to you, and how do they look like to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any closing remarks, anything else that you would want to make sure that the listeners hear today?
I'd probably tell everybody that, you know what, you don't have to change for anybody. You just got to do it for yourself, and you always got to remember that you always have people around you who care about you. In my case, it would be like Ariel, Yesenia, Mario, and of course my family. They're always here for me. They understand me the best. So you always got to keep those people close to you, because those are the ones that really matter.
Thank you, Francisco. So it's an honor, man, to continue to be in space with you. Just to see the young man that you've always been and the young man that you become. I know you shared a lot today. You talked about, that self-care is truly rooted in self-love. That if you want to care for yourself, you have to do it not to change something, but just because you got to love yourself. And I think,
Hmm.
the other things that you mentioned is you don't have to change for nobody. You're sacred just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are, and you're living the life that you're supposed to live. So thank you for that. And I just want to say thank you for today. We gave us a little bit of glimpse of what does it look like to be a Hova Noble graduate. What does it look like to continue to be on your healing journey, and what are some obstacles that today's generation faces. So I just want to say thank you one more time, and always happy to have you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and it was an honor being with you guys. It's always fun being with you guys. You guys make it feel like it's a second family to come home to, so I appreciate it.
And that's exactly what compadres mean, right? When we talk about the National Compadres Network, is that extended kinship. So thank you again for being with us today. We hope that everybody continues to be locked into the Healing Generation podcast. You'll get to hear from our elders. You'll get to hear from the mujeres, the comadres. You'll get to hear from our elders who are our young elders. And then you'll definitely get to hear from Francisco, Pancho, and a lot of other youth and young adults that are still learning what it means to be on that healing journey. So again, thank you for everybody who continues to listen, who continues to stay connected. And we look forward to continuing to sharing space with everybody else. So we hope that you have a great rest of the week. And we hope to be in space with you all soon. Thank you, and may you all have a blessed week.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.